Sean O'Malley recently did an interview with ESPN in the lead up to his fight against Merab at UFC Noche. And in this interview, he gave perfect answer after perfect answer after perfect answer. And upon watching this interview, I have now come away with the conclusion that Sean O'Malley can be a massive star in the UFC if he defeats Merab Dvalishvili at UFC Noche. But on top of that, he absolutely bodied Conor McGregor in this interview. Conor McGregor is sitting at home on a coke binge, balling his fist up in pure anger because not only did Sean O'Malley body him, he did it with facts, and he did it calm, cool, and collected. He called him out for drug use. He called him out for jealousy. We're going to take a look at a couple different clips from this interview, but I wasn't even going to watch this interview. I've been vocal. I don't think O'Malley's all that interesting outside the cage. But this interview won me over. And I know people are going to say, Joe, you've been saying Sean O'Malley isn't going to be a draw. That's not what I've ever said. Let's be clear, okay? Let's clear that up right now because I know people are going to be jumping down in the comments. I've always said I don't think it's Sean O'Malley's personality that would make him a star or a draw in the UFC. I've always said I think it will be his fighting style. And he even kind of alluded to it in this very interview. So I wanted to highlight this interview. I did it with, Belal Muhammad after UFC 304. I highlighted a bunch of interviews where I thought Belal Muhammad said all the right things. This interview showed a side of O'Malley that just seemed more authentic, and I genuinely think he should go with this more. There was a couple funny moments. It didn't seem super forced. It didn't seem like he was trying to be too cool. He wasn't saying, weed is tight, I like weed. He was just being himself, and I really enjoyed watching this interview. Before we get into it, I will link this full interview down in the description if you want to go check it out in its entirety, okay? Go support the full interview. First clip I want to highlight is him talking about when he found out about the fight against Merab at UFC Noche. And it just goes to show basically the entirety of 2024, the UFC is just scrambling around last minute to try to find fights to fit certain event dates. And O'Malley proved it right here. I mean, he was basically waiting on an answer, found out about 8 weeks, a little less than 8 weeks out, basically. It's just crazy to me.
And then still didn't hear about the fight. Like I was told, we might do you guys, we might not, I don't know. So from 12 to 8 weeks, I was in camp, just in case. I didn't know if I was fighting or not, but I was in camp doing everything I would do as if I were in camp because I had a good feel. I was very optimistic. UFC was like, hey, we're not exactly sure what we're doing. It could be you guys, but it might not be, so don't get your hopes up.
That's just crazy to me. You got Sean O'Malley, who you're clearly trying to build as a champion. Now, luckily, he took all the precautions, and he was, getting ready in camp from 12 to 8 weeks, and even after 8 weeks. I covered this maybe a month ago where the UFC still didn't have a main event for Noche, but it's just crazy to me that these fighters are having to put together training camps for mythical fights that may never happen. That may sound familiar, okay? That may sound familiar, but it's just crazy to me. So I wanted to highlight that. Next clip I want to take a look at is him actually kind of hyping up Merab a bit. He does tell a bit of a lie here, but I think it's actually, it's not that bad. At least he probably believes it. A lot of the MMA community believes it as well. But he takes the opportunity to actually elevate Merab. And I think this is perfect from Sean O'Malley. This is a calculated decision from Sean O'Malley. People like Leon Edwards recently made a mistake, acting like their opponent was a bum. And then what happens when you lose to him? So let's take a listen.
Wanted the title shot, but didn't want to fight Aljo. So it was nice of me. I went out there, knocked Aljo out.
So the reason I wanted to highlight that is because that is a great narrative. O'Malley needs to harp on this narrative that Merab is coming for revenge for Aljo. That's what he needs to get to. He's coming for revenge for Aljo. That would help sell this pay-per-view. I mean, already, this is my most anticipated fight right now that's booked right now. I know people Holloway Topuria. I'm more excited for O'Malley versus Merab. But we all know it's not actually true. Merab was never #1 contender while Aljo was champ. Aljo was booked against Henry Cejudo when Merab became #1 contender, knowing that O'Malley was already waiting in the wings. So that's just a narrative Dana and the UFC and a lot of fans ran with as a reason not to give Merab the shot against O'Malley, which O'Malley talks about in this interview as well. It may be very well in this clip. I believe it is in this clip. But that was all just a narrative they ran with.
Could have fought him next, but I was like, I'm going to get that Cheeto fight back real quick, make sure that undefeated record goes back to that undefeated record. So he all confirms what we already know.
The UFC gave him a layup title shot or title defense in his first title defense, of course.
Erased that one off my record and had to do that real quick. Did that in March. So now it's time. It's me versus Merab. It's time. It's a big fight in the division. It's a huge fight in the UFC right now. Like I said, Merab's on a 9-fight win streak, like massive win streak, beating the top guys, not beating scrub, beating the best guys in the world. And it's very, very stylistically different fights. I'm a striker. He's a wrestler.
Leon Edwards could take a page out of Sean O'Malley's book here. Oh my God, Sean O'Malley's hyping up his opponent? So then when he beats him, it looks like a good win. And if he loses to him, oh well. And also, you know what people do when they think a fight might be competitive? They might buy the pay-per-view. They might tune in. Where you have some fighters, and you see it very frequently, act like their opponent is a bum. And then if they win, now it's meaningless. If they lose, now what are they? You know, Leon Edwards found out the hard way against Bilal Muhammad at UFC 304. So I think it's a great decision by O'Malley to say, look what Merab has done. Look at this win streak he's put together against top-level guys. And I'm going to go out there and beat him. And then he's talking about, oh, it's a great matchup. It's me, the striker, versus the grappler. He's selling the fight without having to put on some weird, awkward act, you know, or drum up some fake beef. The fight sells itself. Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili is a gigantic fight that everybody should be interested in. We don't need some fake persona. We don't need some fake personality. We don't need some fake beef. Okay? We can get behind this fight as the champion who looks very, very hard to defeat versus a guy in Merab who's been taking out contender after contender after contender and absolutely deserves this fight. And it's a crazy stylistic clash of striker versus grappler. So good on O'Malley for highlighting that. Now, this next clip I want to show you is actually just funny. I mean, I actually laughed out loud watching this. I don't typically find O'Malley funny, but the way he just kind of rolled this in there and didn't laugh about it at all, I thought it was pretty funny. So we'll listen to it.
He has a good gas tank. I'm just completely different. His last fight against Peter Yan. Peter Yan's 5'4", flat-footed, stands there with him. Exactly how Merab wants someone to fight. I'm 5'11", call it 6'2", long.
Like, that's actually just funny. And he's just being kind of casually thrown in there to be funny. I'm 5'11", call it 6'2". You know, I know that may not seem like, oh, that's hilarious. And I'm not saying it is. But instead of having this, like, you know, I've watched a little bit of Sean O'Malley, like, on his podcast and whatnot. This seems like him just being authentic in an interview where a lot of times, and if you've watched, you know, it comes off as he's acting like, I'm too cool, I'm a superstar. I think this is what he needs to go with. Just be yourself, be authentic, throw out these funny lines once in a while, but don't try to force anything. Because it's not like, you know, everyone needs to be Conor McGregor, especially not now, which Sean O'Malley points out later. But I thought this was just a funny line that he threw in there so smoothly, naturally, and I wanted to highlight it. Next clip. This one actually kind of bothered me a little bit, but it wasn't too bad, so we'll kind of let it slide. But I just want to highlight it a little bit here because it's sad what's going on in the UFC, to be quite honest.
Whether it's a title fight or not, is just as big as a championship fight. That's where I wanted to get. I wanted to get to a point to where no matter where I'm fighting, 45, 35, title, no title, like my fight was going to be a big fight, and I was going to get paid accordingly. And that's where I'm at right now. So, yeah, I would love to go out there and defend the belt 1, 2, 3 more times.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Want to defend the belt 1, 2, 3 more times, but then no, please no.
Maybe go up there, fight Elia, fight Max, winner of that fight. You know, I would love to be able to go box someday. I think that's something I've been saying for a long time. People are...
Please no. Please no. And this is just sad because why is every MMA fighter's dream to go box? And the sad reality is they want to make their name big enough in the UFC that they can go get a crazy payday in boxing. Conor McGregor set the way. Francis Ngannou reinforced it. Now Sean O'Malley wants to do the same. If Sean O'Malley continues to win, I believe he will be a massive star in the UFC, and he should be paid accordingly. We don't need to see him go box, okay? And going up and fighting Topuria or Holloway, not right now. Defend the belt at least 3 times. I'm going to say defend it at least 3 times. I would like 4 title defenses. Personally, I think that should kind of be the general rule. But at least 3 times, okay? So you defended against Cheeto. That was a layup win. You defend against Merab. Defend against Umar, which would be a massive fight. Imagine, oh my God. Imagine he beats Aljo, Merab, and Umar back to back to back. He talks about it later. I think that would make him one of the greatest bantamweights of all time, no doubt. That would be an incredible resume. I mean, think about it. Those 3 fights together, piled on top of each other, would be absolutely insane. Next clip we're going to take a look at was just another moment where, honestly, I just thought it was kind of funny, so I wanted to include it. I mean, this just goes to show, I think he's just being naturally funny here, okay? And I think we can all laugh but also cry about the joke that he made here, because he's talking about, you know, I want to make my name because of my style. I want people to be excited to watch me fight regardless if I'm champion or not. And he throws in a little joke here, and it's sad, actually.
Quick, though. I mean, some people don't, you know, you go out there, lose a couple fights. Tony Ferguson just lost his 8th fight in a row today. Absolutely mine. That is almost more impressive than his 12-fight win streak. Not really.
He realized that was fucked up. He literally realized in real time that was really fucked up. Let's watch that back real quick.
Champions. You lose it quick, though. I mean, some people don't, you know, you go out there, lose a couple fights. Tony Ferguson just lost his 8th fight in a row today. Absolutely mine. That is almost more impressive than his 12-fight win streak.
Watch him. He immediately realized, well, that's really fucked up.
Not really. I say that jokingly, but
it actually is. I think he's right. The fact that Tony is about to string together a losing streak to match his winning streak is rather impressive, especially when the barrier of entry to get into the UFC is lower than it's ever been. So I thought this was a funny moment from Sean O'Malley, and he goes on a little bit more here.
I mean, people still want to see Tony Ferguson. People still have hopes and dreams of him walking around with a belt on his shoulder. So it just depends what kind of fighter you are. I think right now I've delivered enough entertaining fights that I could, you know, people are going to be excited for my fights for a long, long time.
The reason I wanted to highlight this so much is because I've said this for a while. I've said, look, I don't think O'Malley will be a star in the UFC based off his personality. But if he can continue to win, his fight style will be enough. Because we know in the UFC, it's not always the case, but if you can just win, you can become a star. You don't have to have some crazy style. You don't have to have some crazy personality. But if you can continue to win, you can be a star in the UFC. It's not always the case again. If you can continue to win like O'Malley is winning, minus the Petr Yan fight, he will become a star. He has one of the most exciting styles in the entire sport. So, and he recognizes that. And he talks about it a little bit later in this interview as well. Because he does have an exciting style. He's been able to perform at the highest level. He's proven himself, regardless of the title or not the title, he will be a big name. Until he drops off 8 fights like Tony Ferguson, then we'll probably forget about him a little bit. Like Tony's kind of been forgotten about. But people are still excited to see Tony, which is mind-blowing to me. But I think this is just, I mean, this is pinpoint accurate from Sean O'Malley. Now, the next clip, and this is where we're getting into basically the rest of the clips we're going to look at, is Sean O'Malley absolutely bodying, burying Conor McGregor badly, man. And everything he says is spot on accurate, which is quite sad, to be quite honest. I mean, he absolutely destroys Conor McGregor here. Listen to this. I mean, this is just pinpoint accurate. He's asked about Conor. This is his answer.
While you never, something I would do something good, and he would kind of say, yeah, I look good, something like that. It was never, he never wanted to give me that, like, that praise almost. Because, you know, you go back to all my interviews, like, I want to be like Conor, I want to fight, I want to do what Conor did, I want to do what Conor did. Now, you know, I'm 29, defended the belt, something he's never done, by the way.
Boom. Something he's never done. And it gets worse, too. He calls him out for the drug use here in a second. But this is so true. Conor McGregor is like Uncle Rico. He's living in the past, man. Conor's living in 2016. Okay? He's living in 2016, 2015. And don't get me wrong, Conor is still relevant. But the relevancy is fading, and he so desperately wants to be in the spotlight. That's why for the last 8 years, oh my God, he's won 1 fight in the last 8 years. That's wild. That's why over the last 8 years, even when he wasn't injured, he was always tweeting about people when they got big wins because he was trying to steal their shine. And he looks at Sean O'Malley as a future star potentially in the UFC, and Conor doesn't want to give him any rub. Because the second we get a Conor McGregor level star in the UFC currently, Conor McGregor will be swept under the rug even more than he already is. I mean, he's fading into irrelevancy as it is. That's a little bit of a stretch, okay? I understand that. I'm not saying that he's not notable right now, because he is. People care if he fights. But the more he keeps talking and talking and talking and not actually fighting, the more people are going to forget about him. And then if we get a star, the magnitude of what he was at the height of his prime, he's going to be forgotten about a bit. And it doesn't matter if, you know, he goes from like a 10 of popularity down to a 7. That hurts his massive ego, and Sean O'Malley's calling it out perfectly right here, and he gets into it more.
And I just feel pure jealousy from it. It's really weird, because from, you know, the times change. You know, he's a little bit older now. He's on a 5-fight losing streak. He just pulled out because of his toe, which is just not Conor-like.
Absolutely burying Conor there. All facts too. Again, this just comes off as O'Malley being authentic. I think he needs to be like this more and stop trying to be this like caricature of like this. I don't even know what to call it, to be honest. I don't even know what to call it, but he needs to do this more often. He's burying Conor here.
So I feel a lot of jealousy from Conor McGregor, to be honest, which sucks. You know, I hope I don't get bitter like that. Like, I hope once my career starts, you know, maybe doing what his is doing. Well, I hope my career never does that. He's on a footwork.
He's being dead. He's not even taking shots. He's just being dead seriously. He's being dead serious. I said seriously. He's saying, yeah, well, I hope my career never gets like that. But if I did end up in that spot, I hope I'm not bitter about the up and coming guys. Jealousy that they're getting attention. And this is so spot on. I've been saying this about Conor for years. He's constantly trying to steal other people's shine. He doesn't want to give anyone credit. He's tweeting and deleting for attention. He's retiring for attention, because he'll never, and this eats him alive. He'll never be able to capture what he had in 2016. It will only diminish from here on out. And O'Malley's calling that out perfectly.
Or 5-fight losing streak. But, you know, I hope once I'm a little bit older and I see someone else coming up that I'm excited for them, you know, happy for them, almost maybe a mentor towards them, rather than just jealous and bitter because they have the spotlight and I don't. Like, Conor could still come back, fight Chandler, and do big numbers, but it's like, how many more losses? It's almost impressive how many losses he can do to keep coming back and get people's attention. But
destroying him. How many fights can he lose and people still care? I don't understand why anyone gives a rat's ass about Conor returning anymore. Especially when you have him and Chandler blue balling you every other day. Yeah, we're going to be fighting in June of 2021 at this point. You know, I mean, how many fake dates have we gotten? And he calls him out for being a jealous little bitch, and that's exactly what he is. He doesn't want anyone else to be popular. He doesn't want anyone else to have any star power. And that's why he's talked shit on O'Malley's name, which O'Malley addresses even more, gets into it even more here in a second. I mean, this is just perfect from O'Malley.
Even after he took a couple shots at me, I was still like, God, I tried to hate Conor, but I couldn't. Right now, not a huge fan of Conor. You know, the stuff that he was saying on Twitter, stuff that affected my life, really. Like, and
I believe he's talking about the PED drug failure from the past that maybe he did, maybe he didn't, that Conor's now bringing up many years later. And Conor has, you know, that voice in the community where it's getting spread around. It's getting talked about. You know, that probably hurt his feelings. This is supposed to be his hero. It's supposed to be somebody he looked up to. And now the dude's shitting on him for stuff that happened years ago. When Conor's got more rape accusations than wins in the last 8 years. As crazy as that sounds. And meanwhile, he's taking shots at O'Malley, who's always said nothing but praise towards him. So, and he keeps calling him out here even more. I mean, there's multiple more clips.
In a lot of other people's life, and he's laughing at it, and then he goes and deletes it because he's on drugs, and people are like, hey, what are you doing? So, you know, I think Conor, yeah, we're not on great terms.
Perfect. Yeah, Conor's tweeting and deleting it because he's on drugs. I wonder if he was on drugs when he was like in that explicit video of a male solo sexual video. Let's just leave it at that, okay? I don't want to get demonetized here. Next clip we're going to take a look at maybe, just maybe, explains why Conor is also bitter towards Sean O'Malley. And this is a story I never heard of. I would love to hear him elaborate about this more on his podcast or on another interview because I've never heard this discussed before. And I love that he's bringing it up.
I mean, he wanted me to sign to his agency. Like, he was telling me, he was trying to tell me, hey, you can't just pick your fights. You got to fight anybody and everybody. If you want to be the best, you can't pick your fights. And I was like, I'm just saying yes to the UFC. And he's like, you got to come sign with us.
So Conor's pissed that O'Malley wasn't signing with his agency, but also, you got to fight anyone and everyone. You can't just pick your fights. I almost wonder if Conor was trying to sabotage him because there's no doubt the UFC kind of babied him on the come up. And I almost think Conor was jealous that Daddy Dana had a new guy on his lap. He's got O'Malley and Bo Nickal sitting on his lap now. And he's got Conor off to the side, I'm embarrassed to Conor at this point. All he does is go around and, do embarrassing stuff 24/7 and then pull out because of his pinky toe, and he's never going to fight. But this is just perfect from Sean O'Malley. Absolutely perfect from Sean O'Malley calling this out. I would love to hear more about this, to be quite honest. We'll listen to a little bit more.
Me and Audie, your agency or whatever, MMA managers fucking suck, though.
So I think O'Malley manages himself for the most part, from what I understand. Yeah, I think a lot of these managers suck ass, to be quite honest. They're not even getting the fights. What are they doing? Calling up the UFC? Oh, we want this fight. The UFC calls them up, says this is what you're being offered, and that's it. I don't think these managers are doing enough for fighters, for brand deals and contract negotiations, anything. Half of them are working on behalf of the UFC, and I think Sean O'Malley knows that, which just shows that he's smarter than half the roster, because half the roster doesn't understand that. But it also points out that Conor's jealous. Not only jealous, but also upset that he didn't sign with Conor's manager, because Conor is going out there trying to recruit. And I think he might also own a portion of that management agency, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't know that off the top of my head. Next clip we're going to take a look at is he's asked specifically, what would happen if you met Conor now? And the answer is just hilarious.
That's a whole nother story. But yeah, right now I don't think it would be like the dude's on drugs. Like if we met in person, I wouldn't want to fight right there, but the dude's probably pretty amped up. I'd like to, have a good squad with me. But yeah, I have no desire to meet him. I have no desire to talk to him again. Like, what are we going to talk about? There's nothing to talk about.
What are we going to talk about? Cocaine? Is that what we're going to meth? We can talk about cheating on our wives with midgets? What are we going to talk about? It's facts. It's fact. The dude is a shell of his former self, and he's jealous of Sean O'Malley, and Sean O'Malley's just calling it out. He's just speaking facts, and he's not trying to drum up drama. And it's crazy because I haven't seen anyone talk about this interview. I didn't even know this interview existed. I was laying in bed. I happened to get it in my feed on YouTube. I clicked on it, not expecting to even watch the entire thing. And I was like, you know what? Sean O'Malley's spitting facts right now. As I was skimming through, I went back and watched the whole thing, and I'm like, I'm going to make a video on this, highlighting this interview. Because this shows to me, if Sean O'Malley has this level of awareness and using logic and speaking facts, I believe this personality, which I believe this is the real Sean O'Malley, can be a massive star. And he doesn't even need the personality because his fight style can transcend him into a massive star regardless, which he talks about here in a second. In the last clip we're going to take a look at is probably the best clip of the whole entire interview, where he's talking about, him being a draw and illegal streaming, which I've said for a while, half of his fans are going to be illegally streaming his fights. And he also talks about Conor McGregor a little bit more. And he talks about what he's going to do to become the GOAT, and also shits on Conor McGregor one last time.
Depends on what you gauge that off of. Like, it's hard to gauge. Like, usually you kind of look at pay-per-view numbers. But
talking about his star power, by the way.
Right now it's like, you do 500,000 pay-per-views. The other 500,000 was probably legally streamed. It's so easy to stream fights right now that it's hard to judge someone's popularity off that alone.
Yeah, I think the majority of Sean O'Malley's audience is illegally streaming pay-per-views. But I don't believe right now at this point in time that O'Malley's this mega star. But if he keeps winning, he will be a mega star. But we'll talk about that more in a second.
I think who would be able to actually have true analysis data on that is probably the UFC team, people in there to say who brought the most eyeballs, who brought the most excitement to fights. Like right now it's Conor McGregor 100%. Like, he's a dork, but it's the truth.
What he's saying here is that Conor McGregor has the most excitement in terms of the style and name recognition, even though he's a shit fighter and he's a dork. But I actually think he's kind of wrong here. I understand what he's saying, and it is true, but Conor doesn't fight. Conor's been sitting out. Conor McGregor pulled out because of a broken pinky toe, okay? And I do think there's some negotiations going on back and forth between the UFC and Conor, but at this point, I think if you have a Conor McGregor official announcement tomorrow, a lot of fans are going to go, I'll believe it when I see it. That's what everyone's going to say. But if you get a Sean O'Malley announcement, you're like, oh yeah, I can't wait for the Sean O'Malley fight. He's going to show up and actually fight. Conor, not so much. And I think over the next few years, especially if Conor comes back one time and loses, I think he's really going to start to fade into irrelevancy. And I think one day we're going to see a 30 for 30 on Conor McGregor, but he gets into it a little bit more here.
For me to get to that, I go out there and knock out Merab. I go up to 45. I beat Ely. I beat Max. I beat Umar. Like, I'm 3 fights away from being considered one of the greatest of all time.
Listen, I don't want to see him go up right away, so that's not the right order. Beat Merab, beat Umar, then maybe we can talk about it, okay? That's what I would personally like to see. So it's a little bit out of order there, but if he can do that, he is one of the greatest of all time, for sure.
Most exciting of all time. There's difference. No one thinks Conor's the greatest fighter of all time. Like, he was lacking skills. He lacked title defenses. But entertainment-wise, he's the best in the world. Entertainment-wise, he was the best. Greatest fighter of all time, John Jones, Habib, Islam, up there. I want to be both. I want to be one of the greatest of all times and one of the most entertaining of all time. That's my goal.
I absolutely love this. Because of his style, he does not need the personality, okay? He doesn't need the personality of Conor. And also, if you can stay on top and you can defend your belt and you can keep winning, something Conor McGregor was never able to achieve. People have to realize Conor won the belt against Jose Aldo. That's when he really transcended into a star. You can maybe say when he fought Chad Mendez, but when he KO'd Aldo is the moment that really truly launched his career. Then he had the Nate Diaz fights, okay? And he actually, and we're not even going to look at this clip, he said Nate Diaz exposed him later on in this interview, at the tail end of the interview, but we're not going to look at that. But for those fights, he started to really transcend the sport up until the Floyd Mayweather fight. The Floyd Mayweather fight was what, 2016, if I'm not mistaken? No, it was 2017, I believe, because 205 was Eddie Alvarez. Conor, has just faded away. And he was never went on this win streak that made him one of the greatest of all time. I know people will say, oh, well, he was the first 2-weight champion. Never defended those belts. Was spoon-fed a lightweight title shot coming off a loss to Nate Diaz, a journeyman. Okay? If O'Malley can go out there and defeat the elite of the elite in his division, go up and become double champion, undoubtedly going to be one of the greatest of all time. Now, that's premature to even be talking about, but what I love is he not only wants to be exciting like Conor, he also wants to be one of the best. He also wants to stay on top for a while. He also wants to knock off contenders and actually defend his belt. And he absolutely destroyed Conor in this interview, which I thought was hilarious because it's about time somebody calls him out. The MMA media basically panders to Conor McGregor because he generates clicks instead of speaking the truth about him. And O'Malley used to be a little fanboy. Now, he's like, oh, this guy's just jealous of me because I'm making my way up. It's sad. It's sad, quite frankly, when you have someone that you may look up to, you may, want to be one day. Sean O'Malley looking at Conor, and Conor's just shitting on him because Conor wants to knock him down. Conor wants to pull the ladder up behind him, which is something, not in the same respect as Leon Edwards Bilal. Leon was trying to pull the ladder up behind him. Leon was a guy fighting for a title shot that he had deserved. Then he gets the opportunity, wins the belt, and then pulls the ladder up behind him for Bilal Muhammad. Conor was trying to throw dirt on O'Malley's name. O'Malley destroyed him in this interview. And if O'Malley goes out there and beats Merab Dvalishvili at UFC Noche, the sky's the limit, especially if he does it in emphatic fashion, which O'Malley's fight style is always emphatic fashion. So I can't wait for UFC Noche. Massive main event, massive card. And O'Malley's making me a fan with this interview. I think this was a spectacular, perfect interview from Sean O'Malley. I highlighted Bilal recently. Highlight Sean O'Malley. Check out the full interview if you're interested. It's linked down in the description. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for watching.